How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware, and in today's video we've got 3 topics to cover. Starting out with the huge UI overhaul Steam just got. It went into beta last year, but it's finally out to the public. And because they're done with that, the second topic is that they're now reworking the Steam Workshop, which will make installing mods on the Steam Deck way easier. And finally, we got to talk about this huge upgrade PS3 emulation just got, because it's all tailored directly for the Steam Deck. I hope you're having a great week playing a ton of video games. They teased us with the warm weather here in Michigan. I got a sunburn. I sat outside all day last Friday. It was awesome. And then it dropped back down to 20 degrees. I'm still on my Blender journey. I'm having a great week, and I hope you are too. Help me out by subscribing to the channel, setting your notifications to all. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first news story here and talk about the huge UI refresh that Steam just got. So over the past year or so, Valve's been taking some time to go through pretty much the entire front end of Steam and rebuild it from the ground up to make it more visually appealing on the one hand, but on the other hand, make it more controller navigatable. Because while they had a good start 4 years ago with what launched on the Steam Deck, it was 2 separate stores, right? Like you had a totally different UI for the Steam Deck version of the Steam store. And then if you went on your PC and you were using a keyboard and mouse, it looked completely different. So they've kind of taken the best of both worlds and unified it. So you're going to be presented with the same store no matter what device you're on. And obviously this is good for the Steam machine, because while you're going to be using a controller for most of the navigation on the Steam machine, you're also going to be able to use a keyboard and mouse. And I think a lot of people, while it is being marketed as an under TV console, probably are going to use it sitting at a desk to do things like learn Blender, what I'm doing right now. And the work they've done is awesome. I've had it in beta installed on my Windows PC for months now, and it's worked totally fine. So like, I think it's been ready enough to launch into the public for a while now, but they just wanted to make sure it was all good to go, and it is good to go. So what they started with is revamping the featured and recommended section. So now it's going to be a mix of featured games, like if something's new and taking over Steam, like most recently Marathon or Crimson Desert, those are going to be front and center in the new feed that they're going to show you when you boot up Steam. And they've also started including recommended games. So if you're looking for something new to play that you might have skipped back when it came out, or a brand new game you've never even heard of, it's going to read the data that you give them when you buy games on Steam and say, hey, you just bought Escape from Tarkov and you got your pushed in or whatever, and you want something a little more chill, a little more single player oriented, so why not recommend something like Road to Vostok, which just launched into early access. And I'm working on getting that set up on Steam Deck right now. Cannot wait to play it. They also brought the wish list front and center. Steam is the only platform I really heavily use the wish list on, because of course Steam sales. So like if a game comes out, it's an indie game, I'm already playing a bunch of stuff on my Steam Deck and I don't necessarily want to pick the game up day one, I throw it on the wish list, and then the next time a Steam sale starts, I get a nice little email from Steam saying, hey, here's a huge list of every game from your wish list that's on sale. And I also use it to track early access games, because while early access games have gotten a lot better, I would say over the past few years, a few of them come out and I look at the reviews, I look at the YouTube videos, and I'm like, I'll wait for a few more updates to pick that up. It's nice to have them on your wish list so you can kind of scroll through it and see what games have gotten updates over the past few months, and you can make the decision whether or not to buy them. And the final new section is all about keeping track of DLC for your game. So like if you have a game, you haven't played it in a while, you wanted more content, but it kind of fell off your radar, there's a new section on Steam that's going to show you new DLC that has released for games that you own or have played recently. I hope it ranks based on what you've been playing the most, because like I don't need to see DLC for something like, I don't know, a game that I didn't really like that I can't think of off the top of my head, but something like Hunt Showdown 1896, when they add in a new skin, which is like my addiction, I want to see that front and center. And I gotta say, over the past few months of using it in beta, it seems like that's exactly how it's working. And one cool feature that they've added is infinite scrolling. So once you get past that first block that has all of the new featured stuff, it's just going to keep recommending you games forever. And there are so many games on Steam. I kind of got to a point before this whole infinite scroll recommendation setup that they've implemented where I felt like I knew every game that was on Steam, and one of the biggest criticisms Valve has faced over the past couple of years, especially from indie developers, is that it seems like there's a threshold you have to cross before your game even shows up on the front page of Steam, and it makes it really hard to find new games for people that they might be interested in. It's been working so well for me lately. Like this new game I found a couple of months ago called Carnival Massacre. Steam was able to tell that I've been really interested in these indie clones, I guess, of Resident Evil 1 style games, like, you know, low poly graphics, small Resident Evil style setups where it's like a hub world, and then you go to one area, get a key item that unlocks a different area on a different part of the map. It has a stalker enemy in the central part of the map that usually shows up halfway through. You get progression through finding better weapons throughout the entire experience. So it recommended me a $5 game called Carnival Massacre that I ended up beating in one night. One of the best indie games I've ever played, and I did not see a single YouTube video about this game or article. So I was able to find it just by naturally using Steam. So this infinite scroll feature has been working great for me in the perspective that I'm spending more money. But like, you know, that's both good and bad. It's good for the developers, bad for my wallet. And they've also improved the hover windows that pop up. Like when you put your mouse over a game, the info that it shows you is actually useful, and it'll even show a mini trailer for the game. And the best part is, if you don't want that to happen, you can turn off everything from the hover windows all the way down to the mini trailers, so you can really tailor make Steam work exactly how you want it to. The UI itself also just looks really nice and modern, and it works well on the Steam Deck. I think the Steam Deck is getting the most benefits out of this because everything just overall runs a lot faster. So this is a huge update that's really going to affect how you purchase games on Steam, and I think it's great that they're just throwing it in there just in time for Steam Machine and Steam Frame to come out. But that brings us to the second news story, which is that the next item of Steam on the list, because they're actually going through everything on Steam one page at a time and rebuilding it from scratch, is the Workshop, which is getting a beta update right now that should make it a whole lot easier to use. And just like this other new Steam UI, it's tailor-made for the Steam Deck. So if you've never used Workshop before, it's basically like if Nexus Mods was built into Steam. If developers opt into it, people can upload mods for games. You can one-click add them, and then they'll download as if they're DLC as an update for the game in your downloads list in Steam. So I use it for things like Left 4 Dead 2 or Project Zomboid. That's how I found my Rick Grimes skin, my Hunk skin, my Daryl skin, my Negan skin. I got all of that through the Steam Workshop. Everything is free on there, but for a while, like years, probably 3 or 4 years if we're talking serious here, I've had to do it on my phone or on a desktop because it's not easy to interact with it on the Steam Deck. Everything is just so big and it's hard to even see what you're navigating. So they went in with this new beta and just made it a lot more clean and easy to navigate with a controller specifically. So if you're interacting with the Steam Workshop on the Steam Deck, like night and day difference, just they flipped a switch and made it totally usable when before it completely wasn't. And the way they did that is by widening out the page and making the buttons bigger. It's a simple change, but it just goes a long way. They've also improved the filtering a ton. There used to be so many different options you could filter, which is nice on the one hand, but it got out of control on the other. Like the way I used to have to use Workshop was I'd go to YouTube and look up mod lists for specific games in the Steam Workshop, and then I'd literally open up a note and write down the creator and mod name, because sometimes if you search the creator, they don't come up. Sometimes if you search the mod name, it doesn't come up. So I had to write down both. Then I'd go back to Steam on my desktop, start writing those down into Steam and trying to find them. It was just a cumbersome process that has been totally fixed. And if you don't want to click into a mod, go back and reload the entire page when you realize it's not what you're looking for. They now have a hover window for that as well. So it'll give you a brief overview of what exactly the mod does for whatever game you're looking for. And finally, they've completely rewritten the code for it from the ground up to just make it a whole lot easier to navigate in big picture mode or on the Steam Deck. So yeah, I think the order that they did this in was really smart. You start with the thing that people use the most, aka the front page of Steam. Then you work your way down the list, the second most used thing, the third most used thing, and so on and so forth. Obviously, Steam is too big to just do it all at once. I think this would take like 5 years if we had to wait for that. So I'm fine with them doing it a little bit piecemeal, and I'm glad they're using their time wisely while we wait for the release date of the Steam Machine. And just like I said in the last video, all this stuff that that they're doing while they nail down the release date for all this stuff is just going to make the day one experience on it that much better. So I really appreciate it. But finally, that brings us to the third news story here, which is your Steam Deck just became the ultimate PS3 thanks to this RPC S3 upgrade. Guys, I did it. I learned the actual name of the emulator. I read it. I have it written down when I record the video. I just do bullet points. I don't script my videos. And I have dyslexia or something because I was confident that it was RC PS3 because it's like RC remote controlled PS3, but it's actually RPC, like our personal computer S3, Station 3. I don't know. I was reading it wrong forever. Now I'm not because of you guys telling me in the comments. So thank you. But anyway, this is actually two huge upgrades in one because there's a performance side upgrade that happened earlier in the week where they basically had a huge breakthrough in emulating the CPU of the PS3 because it used the cell processor. And the novel feature was that it could run 6 CPUs at the same time handling tasks and then filter them all down and synchronize all of the results to give you a better looking and running game on the PlayStation 3. It was really cool back in the day. It resulted in some really bad ports like the Orange Box from EA. They handled the port of that for PS3, Disaster, and BioShock. Those are two big disasters right towards the launch of the PS3, but once developers started to figure it out, it actually resulted in better looking games on the PS3 than the Xbox 360, so it was worth it. But now, 20 years later or so, it's causing problems for emulation, but they had a huge breakthrough in figuring out how to emulate that CPU side stuff. Long story short, it results in 5 to 7% better performance, so you get better FPS no matter what device you're on. But the second update is, just like Valve, they've completely overhauled the experience of using the actual emulator, so they've added in the ability to navigate the entire thing with the controller. There's also specific features that will be enabled probably by EmuDeck very soon that make it run better on lower spec hardware, aka something using the Steam Deck's chip or a Z1 Extreme or even a Z2 Go or Z2 Extreme, so you'll get better performance. And they've even shown off a lot of games that previously had trouble on handhelds like the Steam Deck that now run at least at a locked 30 FPS. But the biggest feature of all is that you can make changes to the emulator on the fly and actually just apply settings without restarting the entire thing. On a PC, that's not the biggest deal in the world because things load so fast, but when you've got multiple button presses to get back into a program like you do on the Steam Deck, removing that friction goes a very long way, so that's a huge optimization right there. One of the benchmark games that they used to show performance was Yakuza Dead Souls. I had never heard of this game and I can't believe it because a Yakuza game with zombies running around sounds excellent. Apparently it was really hard to run on both the regular PS3 and through emulation, but now on the Steam Deck you get a locked 30 FPS out of the emulator, so that's a huge jump forward. And I've been using this emulator over the past couple of weeks to play Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. If you missed my last video, emulating Peace Walker is kind of a mess because if you go for the original PSP version, you can upscale it and it looks really good, but that game natively ran at 20 FPS and it's hard coded to run at 20 FPS. So if you use a cheat to bump it up to 30 or 60, it breaks animations. And just like the original Metal Gear Solid, there's a part in the game where you have to rapidly tap a button to stop Snake from dying when he's getting electrocuted. And if you run it at 60 FPS, it's impossible to do because it increases the game's overall speed like Dark Souls back in the day. And also, while the 60 FPS hacks increase the gameplay fluidity and make it a lot more fun to play, when you get into cutscenes, the animations still run at 20, so there's a lot of ghosting and double frame shit going on, so it's not that good. So then I figured out that it's not that hard to use this PS3 emulator on the Steam Deck, and I got the HD collection set up. So that was Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and Peace Walker back on the PS3, and that fixes every problem, and it runs great. You have to mess with the settings to get it to a lock 60, but I'm totally fine with 30 FPS, and as I said in the last video, I know I could wait for the Master Collection Volume 2, but I just have Metal Gear Solid on the mind right now, so I figured if it runs well, and that's the version they're porting, it's going to look exactly the same when I can buy it in August, so I may as well play it now. But I also downloaded Dante's Inferno, which is one of my favorite God of War likes that I used to play all the time back in the day. So like, admittedly, I've only tried out 2 games, but the experience was excellent from the jump because all you have to do to get this emulator working is download EmuDeck, let it install the emulator, type in PS3 firmware in Google, click install via computer, downloads the software update, then you go into file, import firmware, add that firmware, you're good to go. And if you use EmuDeck to set it up, it configures all the controls for you right out of the box. So it's a a pretty plug and play experience. So to get this extra level of attention and care is awesome. And that's what you get when you have a big community rallying around one type of hardware like the Steam Deck. And I can't imagine it getting worse or staying the same once the Steam Machine is out and that community starts to grow. Let me know what you're playing down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe, set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.